What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. I'm your host, Warren Thompson, and right now there is just a ton of talk going on about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Rightfully so, people are wondering who exactly is going to be the next Black Panther, and there's even a lot of talk of Dr. Doom possibly being behind the war between Atlantis and Wakanda, which would be an insanely cool cameo, of course, but I do think there are going to be other cameos in Wakanda Forever that could also set up some pretty big things in the MCU, like the X-Men, and I am specifically talking about the mutant Storm. And for those of you who know the story of T'Challa and Storm, you know why, but I will be specifically talking about why Storm and other cameos are possible and why some are actually very likely in Wakanda Forever. And we could have actually already seen a Storm Easter egg in the teaser trailer for Wakanda Forever, which of course we'll talk about in this video. And I actually think that we could see a ton of cameos from old characters and from some new characters as well. And the reason that I think we could see so many cameos is because of T'Challa's funeral. His funeral, of course, is going to be sad, but like we saw in the trailer, it looks like it is going to be somewhat of a celebration in Wakanda. And whether it is going to be sad or a celebration or both, I would expect some Avengers to show up. Now, I'm sure not all of the Avengers will be invited, and I'm sure that most of the world won't be invited. But there are some characters that I would expect to show up, like Bucky, who spent a lot of time in Wakanda from the end of Civil War to Avengers Infinity War, who eventually would go on to become the White Wolf. I would assume that Bucky shows up at the funeral, and I think it would actually be kind of weird if he didn't. But there are some characters who most likely would not show up to the funeral. These are characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor, Spider-Man, Ant-Man, Hawkeye. These are all characters that had contact with T'Challa but didn't have really a relationship with him. They either fought with him in Avengers Endgame or fought against him in Captain America Civil War. But also in Endgame, everybody fought together, but it was kind of a mess, so they didn't really have time to talk. But here are the characters that could show up, and like I said, there could be some old ones, but I'm expecting some new ones as well. Now, right away, I am not expecting Captain America to show up, but there has been a lot of talk of Chris Evans returning, although he has denied these rumors. I do think it would be cool if he did a quick little cameo just to show up to show his love for T'Challa. But I'll group Captain America with the less likely people to show up. However, his two best friends, I think, should show up to the funeral. Bucky, of course, and then Sam. They all fought together in Wakanda, and of course they all made amends after Civil War. Bucky even went back to Wakanda. It would make sense if these two showed up to show their respect. Then we have Bruce Banner / the Hulk. Now, the Hulk is appearing in She-Hulk, so we know Marvel's not afraid to put the Hulk in other shows or movies, and he was a big part of the fight in Avengers Infinity War at Wakanda. Plus, not to mention, he was a brilliant scientist, and he clearly saw how advanced Wakanda was, and how smart Shuri was, and I'm sure he'd love to go visit Wakanda again, and of course, pay his respects. And then I would actually expect War Machine to show up. And not only because he fought alongside of T'Challa in Avengers Infinity War in Wakanda, but also as kind of a representation of America showing their support for Wakanda. He's very high up in the military, and he was a friend. It just makes sense for him to show up all around. Now, speaking of the X-Men and mutants in Wakanda Forever, obviously Namor in the comics is a mutant. He's half mutant, half Atlantean. But in fact, one of Namor's nicknames from Marvel Comics is the first mutant. And now, of course, the first mutant in the MCU is Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. So mutants are arriving, which is why I think that Storm could actually make her MCU debut in Wakanda Forever, showing up for T'Challa's funeral. Now, for those of you who read the comics, you know that Storm's origin story has been retconned, but Marvel does consider her new retcon story to be her actual origin story, where when she is 12 years old, she is rescued by T'Challa. The two of them quickly fall in love with each other, and eventually the two of them would go on to get married. So yes, the mutant Storm does become the Queen of Wakanda. And from there, her story is actually really cool. She has to decide between being the Queen of Wakanda and an X-Men. However, she says, no, I won't decide, I will do both, and she even comes in contact with the Black Panther god, Bast. Now, obviously, unfortunately, since Chadwick Boseman has passed away and T'Challa is not going to be a character in the MCU anymore, I don't think any of this is going to happen. Which is fine, we've had plenty of X-Men movies with Storm where it doesn't mention T'Challa at all. However, I do think they should keep this connection because I think it would be meaningful. Now, I don't think that Storm and T'Challa were married at any point in time in the MCU, but I do think that they could keep Storm's origin the same, where when she's 12 years old, T'Challa actually rescues her. They don't have to fall in love, but they could have been great friends. Or heck, maybe at some point in time, they were in love, but for whatever reason, it didn't last. Regardless, I think they should include this connection in the MCU, and if they do, that means that she should show up for the funeral. And since right now it seems they're introducing mutants in different projects, and Namor is a mutant, it kind of seems like the perfect opportunity to just throw Storm in there. And there may have already been a little hint at that in the trailer. Now, in Storm's original backstory, she is a descendant from a long line of African witch priestesses with white hair and blue eyes, and a natural gift for sorcery. Well, in the Black Panther Wakanda Forever teaser trailer that we got, we can actually see that some people in the teaser trailer during the ceremony for T'Challa have white hair. Perhaps this person could be from the same tribe that Storm's mother was from, and Storm's mother was actually the princess of the tribe. Perhaps this is a hint that some other tribes that Storm might be from could show up to the funeral. Now, I would love for them to kind of hit the nail on the head and just straight up say, this is Storm, this is Aurora, but I think Marvel Studios might be a little bit more subtle, just having a woman show up with white hair, saying something along the lines of, I'll miss you, friend, and just hint at it and maybe not address her by name. But I do really hope that this could be a cameo that we could get, and again, based off of the story in the comics and the future of the MCU introducing the mutants and the X-Men, I think it's a perfect opportunity. Now, I do also think that Namor is going to show up for the funeral. Namor and Wakanda have a very long history with each other, and they're not always enemies. Namor isn't really a villain, he's more of an anti-hero. But given the long history between Wakanda and Atlantis in the comics, I'm sure that's going to somewhat transfer over to the MCU. I'm sure Wakanda and the Atlanteans aren't just going to go to war with each other randomly, or after their first meeting. I'm sure they've met before in the MCU. In fact, in the trailer, we saw Namor as a kid on land. It could have been in Wakanda, so I'm sure they have a relationship already. And since the Atlanteans are kind of like the Wakandans, they try to stay secretive, they seclude themselves from the world, and of course they live underwater, I'm sure they've shared many things in common, including vibranium that is probably in the ocean. I'm assuming that Namor has probably met King T'Challa, even if he met him before he was king. And I actually think this could be the first time we see him in the film. In the beginning, at the funeral, he shows up to pay his respect, but I'm sure it's going to be somewhat controversial because of the history between Wakanda and Atlantis. This is probably going to be where the tension starts. Namor shows up for the funeral, Wakandans don't really like that, and then something else happens and the two of them just go to war with each other. Now, like I mentioned before, there's a rumor going around that Dr. Doom could actually be behind everything that happens in Wakanda Forever, because he wants to start a war between Atlantis and Wakanda so he himself can get some vibranium. Now, having said that, I don't think we're actually going to see Doom in the movie. I think we'll probably hear a name drop, or perhaps he'll show up in a post-credit scene. But I would absolutely freak out if Victor Von Doom showed up for the funeral of T'Challa. I do not think this is going to happen, but the possibilities for a ton of cameos are very, very real. So I'm definitely expecting some cameos. We'll have to see who it is, but I am really hoping for Storm. It just makes sense. But hey, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments down below. If you love Marvel, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest news. For live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.